My name is Eleanor Whitfield, and at 32, I never thought I'd smile at the news that my brother Prescott had been arrested. Prescott, the golden boy, the one my parents would have mortgaged their souls for. 2 years earlier, they'd left me to drown alone through my divorce and financial collapse. Then, at 2 a.m. the phone rang. Mom sobbing, Dad shouting in the background. They needed my legal expertise, my money, my help. After a lifetime as runner-up in my own family, the tables had finally turned. Growing up in suburban Ashbourne, we looked picture-perfect. My father Nathaniel was a hospital administrator. My mother Margaret taught 3rd grade. Colonial house, summers at Brighton Cove, church every Sunday. My childhood albums show a gap-toothed girl grinning like she had no idea what was coming. Photos only tell the story their owners want kept. My parents' expectations were sky-high from the start. Reading before kindergarten, skipping a grade, piano, math tutoring, competitive swimming. No room for failure. Then, when I was 8, Prescott arrived, and the son of our family found a new center to orbit. My piano recital, circled on the calendar for months, got scrapped because Prescott had a mild fever. Not pneumonia, a fever. Both parents stayed home anyway. By my teens, the pattern was set in concrete. Prescott's Little League games, never missed, complete with matching t-shirts bearing his face, a fashion choice I still haven't recovered from. My ballet recitals and debate tournaments, an audience missing the 2 people who mattered most. I became fiercely self-sufficient, babysitting from age 12 for my own school supplies, forging my mother's signature on permission slips while she helped Prescott with homework. At 14, I qualified for a statewide piano competition. 10 minutes before we were supposed to leave, my mother mentioned they wouldn't be coming. Prescott's game had been rescheduled. I took 3 buses alone, 1 second place, and came home to an empty house. They were still at the game. I kept hoping achievement would buy equal love. I graduated valedictorian, saw one flicker of pride in my parents' eyes. Gone the instant the ceremony ended, replaced by talk of Prescott's baseball scholarship prospects, though he was still a freshman. At dinner, my father toasted, "Your success reflects well on this family. Now Prescott can see what hard work looks like." I swallowed champagne and disappointment together. I wanted to be a top-tier lawyer, partly from conviction, partly still chasing their approval. My acceptance letter to a prestigious pre-law program got a lukewarm nod. That same week, Prescott hit a home run in an ordinary game and got an extravagant celebration dinner and a new gaming console. I cried into my pillow that night, acceptance letter in hand. College was liberating academically. Dean's List internships, but old patterns held. My parents funded Prescott's repeated attempts at community college, tutors included, while telling me, "You're smart enough to figure it out. You've always been so independent." That independence wasn't a trait. It was survival. I worked the library, tutored, kept a 3.9 GPA, and worked retail over holidays instead of going home. In law school, I met Julian Hastings, raised by parents who'd apparently invented unconditional support. After one dinner with my family, he said deadpan, "Let me guess, they spoil your brother rotten, right?" It took him one evening to see what I'd spent a lifetime ignoring. The cruelest entry. My parents skipped my law school graduation, 7 years of work, because Prescott, who'd already dropped out of 3 colleges, had a game in an adult recreational league. Not a championship. Hobby league. My mother later explained he'd have been so disappointed otherwise. The message was clear. His disappointment outweighed my achievement. Julian and I married a year later, in a small wedding buoyed by his warm family, while mine contributed little but tried to control everything. "If you'd chosen a practical career like teaching, you wouldn't have this debt," my mother said of our venue choice. This from the woman fully funding Prescott's abandoned majors. Julian and I settled into Ashbourne life. A condo, a wry grey cat we named Gavel, and Sunday calls that always drained me, circling back to Prescott's latest crisis no matter how the conversation started. When we lost a pregnancy in year 3, my mother offered brief sympathy before pivoting to Prescott's relationship troubles. I hung up and finally said aloud what I'd always known. "They will never love me the way they love him." At year 5, I took a partnership track offer in Kingsbridge. Julian transferred. We moved into a bright apartment in Maple Heights. My career soared, my salary nearly doubled, and the physical distance gave me emotional room too. Meanwhile, Prescott launched a sports memorabilia business, financed by a withdrawal from my parents' retirement account. Prescott has tremendous entrepreneurial spirit, my father declared. I didn't mention this was the fourth right opportunity in as many years. As my career climbed, my marriage cracked. 12 days before our 6th anniversary, I came home early to surprise Julian with concert tickets and found him with Priscilla Vance, a junior associate from my own firm. He blamed my ambition, my emotional unavailability, accusations that landed on every old bruise. I checked into a hotel and called my mother, desperate for comfort. Long pause. Marriages take work, Eleanor. Maybe if you'd focused more on being a wife than a lawyer. I sat in stunned silence. The divorce turned ugly. Julian's lawyer challenged our prenup, chasing half my earnings from a childless 6-year marriage. Then a burst pipe flooded my building, draining my savings into hotel bills. Desperate, I asked my father for a $20,000 loan. We're on a fixed income. We can't bail you out of problems you should have anticipated. 2 days later, my cousin Marjorie mentioned my parents had just given Prescott $75,000 for his failing business. I thanked her and threw my phone at the wall hard enough to crack the screen. Deserved. I worked 70-hour weeks, ate cold takeout at the counter, and woke up anxious most mornings. My mother told relatives the divorce was my own fault for being career-obsessed. When Prescott's next venture, a sports bar near Grantwood Park, failed too, my parents were already funding the one after that, while I learned via social media they'd vacationed with him in Florida the same month they couldn't spare. A dime for my housing crisis. I spent that Christmas alone with too much wine, watching photos of Prescott's gift pile flood my feed. My mother sent me a generic gift card. At my father's 60th, I flew in with an expensive watch I could barely afford. My mother introduced me as my daughter the lawyer, with none of the warmth reserved for Prescott, my brilliant son who owns his own business, a business built on their money, months from closing. When I admitted honestly that the divorce still hurt, my mother patted my hand. If you tried harder with Julian, men need to feel appreciated. My husband had cheated on me in our own bed, and she was suggesting I hadn't been attentive enough. I stood, hands shaking. You have never once given me the benefit of the doubt you give Prescott freely. And still you make my pain my fault. I changed my flight home that night. On the plane, I decided to stop chasing approval that was never on offer. For months I kept contact to a scandal-avoiding minimum. Freed of that drain, I rebuilt. The divorce settled. Julian getting less than demanded, more than deserved. I started therapy with Dr. Whitmore, who called it the exhausting mathematics of parental favoritism. You've spent your life trying to earn love that should have been free, she told me once, and I cried through the rest of the hour. I built a chosen family. My assistant Beatrice folded me into her boisterous relatives' gatherings, and senior partner Josephine Carrington, sharp, unsentimental, brilliant, mentored me after watching me survive a brutal deposition. You work like someone trying to outrun something, she said. Sustainable success requires balance. Under her guidance, I led a major fraud defense that saved a client millions and reformed their compliance program. Afterward, a handwritten note appeared on my desk. You've earned your place at the table, not by working yourself to death, but by being smarter than your opponents. Framed it. By 31, my divorce debt was paid off, and I'd bought a condo overlooking Lake Serenity. Signed under only my own name, one of the proudest moments of my life. I also fell for Sebastian Cole, a pediatric surgeon who treated my ambition as an asset. When I told him the whole family history, he said simply, "Your parents' failure to value you properly reflects their limitations. It says everything about them, nothing about you." By 32, I believed I'd finally broken free. I was wrong. At 2:15 on a Tuesday morning, my parents' number lit up my phone. My mother's voice was barely recognizable. "Eleanor, it's Prescott. He's been arrested." Sebastian stirred beside me as the story spilled out between sobs and my father's furious interjections. Wire fraud and embezzlement tied to CoinCrest, Prescott's cryptocurrency platform. An elaborate Ponzi scheme, nearly $2.8 million in losses. He needs a lawyer, a good one. We put up the house for bail. We need help with fees. You have to help us. For a second, the old instinct rose. The urge to fix, to rescue, to finally earn the love I'd never been given freely. Then came the memories. The loan they'd refused, the divorce they'd blamed on me. For the first time, they needed me more than I needed them. I'll need details before I can advise anything, I said, professional training overriding the chaos. Bail. $650,000, mortgaged against the house. They wanted me to represent Prescott or push my firm to take it pro bono, plus cash for expenses. My mother tried the old lever. Your father's having chest pains. We're still your parents. Family helps family. I nearly laughed at the hypocrisy. I'll call tomorrow, I said and hung up. Family emergency? Sebastian asked, switching on the lamp. Family hypocrisy emergency, I said and told him everything. My first instinct was pure and satisfying. Tell them to figure it out, exactly as they'd told me. The fantasy was sweet for about 4 seconds before it curdled. Riding in to rescue, everyone made my stomach turn just as fast. Neither option was who I'd worked to become. I called Dr. Whitmore for an emergency session. This is also an opportunity, she said, to build a new dynamic based on honesty and boundaries instead of resentment and capitulation. By the end of the hour I had a plan. That evening I called back. I'm willing to help with terms. Consultation and attorney referrals, yes. My personal representation or free firm resources, no. An ethical conflict. Financial assistance, no. And the real condition. Mandatory family therapy for all of us, Prescott included. My father bristled. So you're using our crisis as leverage. This is about your brother's charges, not your childhood grievances. No, Dad, this is about boundaries while still offering real help. Prescott is finally facing consequences after a lifetime of being shielded from them. My mother tried tears and guilt, I held firm. He may go to prison regardless of who represents him. Those are my terms. A long pause then stiffly. We'll consider it. Could you send those attorney names? I sent the list and waited. 9 days later my mother called back subdued. We'd like to accept your help. We'll do the therapy. I flew home alone. The house looked smaller, the lawn neglected. My mother answered looking like a stranger. Gray roots, exhausted eyes. My father had aged years and months. Prescott was conveniently at a friend's. On the mantel, Prescott's photos still dominated. My law school graduation photo had disappeared entirely. Evidence enough for any courtroom. After my father walked me through the legal strategy, I set my things aside. Now we discuss the therapy. Is that really necessary right now? Seems self-indulgent, my father said. I didn't blink. Non-negotiable. First session's tomorrow at 10. This isn't punishment. It's healing what's hurt all of us, including Prescott. What happened to him didn't come from nowhere. My mother finally asked, small-voiced, what it would involve. I explained. Individual sessions, then joint work, aimed at healthier patterns, not blame. At the door my father asked, genuinely confused. Were we really so terrible to you? I chose the simplest truth I had. You were wonderful parents to Prescott. I just needed you to be wonderful parents to me too. Therapy was as hard as expected. Prescott showed up sullen, there only because his legal fate depended on it. My parents presented polished cooperation over deep resistance. Dr. Fairweather saw through it instantly, redirecting my father's attempts to dominate and holding space for my mother's. In court, Prescott took a plea deal. Restitution, a fine, 2 years house arrest, 5 years probation. Avoiding prison thanks to his attorney's skill and his cooperation with investigators. In therapy, progress crept forward unevenly. My father resisted the idea his parenting had been anything short of perfect. Prescott swung between defensiveness and flashes of real insight. The breakthrough came 3 months in a session about my own childhood. Guided by Dr. Fairweather, I laid it out plainly. The missed recital, the overshadowed graduation, the law school ceremony skipped for a rec league game, the divorce they'd refused to help with while funding Prescott's ventures. My mother's face crumpled. I had no idea. I thought you were the strong one, the one who didn't need us the way he did. My father sat rigid, jaw tight, something finally shifting in his eyes. Progress stayed uneven. My father once stormed out of a session. Prescott skipped appointments when things got too personal. But slowly real change took root. My mother started calling just to ask about my life, not as a segue to Prescott's news. My father finally broke down in a solo session, and in our next family meeting told me, unsteady, "I was wrong, Eleanor. I told myself providing materially and pushing you to excel made me a good father. But I never gave you unconditional love. I failed you, and I am deeply sorry. Not a magic fix for 30 years of hurt, but a real beginning." 6 months after Prescott's arrest, Sebastian proposed. My mother asked thoughtful questions and offered help without trying to control it. My father was, for the first time, simply proud of me. No comparison attached. At our small spring wedding, my parents contributed generously and without strings, and my father walked me down the aisle in tears. In his toast, "Eleanor has always been extraordinary. Her intelligence, her determination, her capacity for forgiveness and growth have humbled me. I am more proud to be her father than words can express." Prescott came with a new girlfriend who, refreshingly, expected him to actually show up for his own life. Our relationship stayed complicated, but therapy let us finally relate as adults instead of lifelong competitors. Healing my family has been slow, uneven, and never fully finished. But the honest foundation we built made room for something I never thought possible. A relationship based on mutual respect instead of performance and approval chasing. I no longer measure my worth by their validation. And, paradoxically, it was only once I stopped desperately seeking their approval that a healthier relationship finally became possible. If you've ever been the less favored child, if you've spent years trying to earn love that should have been given freely, your worth was never the problem. The problem was someone else's failure to see it. And sometimes the family that saves you is the one you build yourself.